In this video, my friends, we'll be concentrating exclusively on the camera of the iPhone SE. There's good things and bad things, and I'll point them both out to you. And make sure you let me know in the comments what you think is good and bad about this camera. Let's take a closer look. The main things that we're going to cover in this video will be that 4K 60 frames per second video camera on the back. We'll be looking at the 240 FPS slow motion, what it's like during the day for photographs and also for night for video, and we'll take a quick look at a feature on that front camera. But we'll also delve in, just see how much or in fact how little detail there are in the night photos. Now, for the majority of people, the 4K camera on the back is going to be more than adequate. In fact, it's a brilliant camera, and even side by side to something like the iPhone 11 Pro, you can barely tell the difference in very good light. It does 4K at 60 frames per second, which is another great feature, which means that you can slow the footage down 50% and still get that crisp 4K image. So far so good. You're going to be really pleased with that 4K quality. It's definitely something which is really impressive initially, straight away, without making any changes to it at all. It's going to be perfect for most people. Look at the hairs on the dog's head. Really crisp and in focus. And if we go to something even closer, you can see it does a nice bokeh effect in the background also. And that means it's blurry in the background, guys. Where I was particularly impressed is the exposure in daylight. And actually here we're facing directly into the sun, and you can see all of the clouds below are still in focus. It doesn't wash out that image at all. It doesn't blow out the screen. And also on a cloudier day, when we're looking at quick focusing on the screen, then looking at the background, it does a great job. But it doesn't do a brilliant job when you focus on something a lot closer, when you're switching between focal points. So here you're focusing on the phone and then going to the grass, and as you can see, it took quite a while for it to change. Again, here on the screen and now on the grass, and this, it really struggled. In fact, it didn't ever focus on the grass, and it wasn't until I moved that back up and focused on the tree line in the background did it work. Now that isn't the same all the time, because the next time I did it, it worked really well. Here, as you can see, take it away and it focused very quickly, but you did get some different results. One area which we did pick up a problem was colour representation. Here, the green that you're seeing on the screen is completely different to how it actually was, and when I panned away and went back, this was much more representative to what was there. And if I screenshot those images side by side, you can see that there's a completely different colour, and that was literally from panning away and panning back. The day was the same, the light was the same, it was exactly the same time. So that's something which we noticed time and time again happened. We got different colour greens. In terms of the jello effect, when you shake the camera from side to side, it wasn't too bad. There is optical image stabilization built in. In terms of that, when we also then went for a walk, again we were pretty impressed at walking. It did a good job. So we were using the phone just holding it in our hands. If you did want to improve the footage and the stabilization, then you can do two things. You can either get something very simple like a phone holder and a grip, and literally that will make it much more steady than your hand waving it around, or you could use a gimbal, and again that would give you some compensation for the movement. But it wasn't too bad. When we went a little bit quicker, like here for instance, you'll see in just a second as we're running, then it becomes not very usable, but you know, that's what you would expect for a phone of this price point. So many times with this phone, you'll see that it does a pretty good job at a lot of things. Not the best job, but a pretty good job. Slow motion is another one of those. Now, obviously we touched on 4K at 60 frames per second earlier, but this now is slow motion 1080p at 240 frames per second. And I think it looks really good. Now, it wasn't without incident, and I'll come on to that in just a second, but when you think this is 240 frames per second, it's giving a really clear image. Again, this is in good light conditions. That's something which you must bear in mind, because it does make a difference to the quality of what you'll see. But I did get occasions where I had this, where the focus again just didn't work. Now again, I have to be balanced and say that that was probably 1 in 6 or 7 times it struggled with focus. But if that's the perfect slow motion shot you're going for, then you're definitely going to be disappointed that you've missed out on it. So the most used is obviously going to be the rear camera, and the photos it produces are quite simply brilliant. for the majority of the time. It's a 12 megapixel camera, it's a 1.8 aperture, and they say it's wide, but it's not ultra wide. It's got a 5x digital zoom and some other features. But if you look at this image, it's a brilliant detail, and if I zoom in 200%, you can see it still retains brilliant focus. And even at 400%, it's very, very good quality indeed. And here are just a few other examples of some other photographs that we took. Again, bear in mind that these are in good light conditions. It's a nice, bright, sunny day, but everything was captured pretty good. Now, there were some occasions where we were particularly impressed. One was that dog shot at the front. Here is also a very nice shot, and this one again even lower down. The bokeh effect in the distance really gives a professional looking image, and that, I think, is a great shot. But there were a couple of occasions when again we lost focus. So on these two shots, it was picking up the background rather than the foreground, and that was with me concentrating on the object in the middle, obviously being the dog. So just bear that in mind, that again, it seems to just forget focus every now and then. One of the skill tests for any camera, whether it be a phone or a normal camera, is how it performs at night. And what we've done is we've taken a series of photographs in diminishing light. And what you'll notice is that it does begin to struggle. While there is light around, it does an okay job. I certainly wouldn't say that it is the best. If you zoom in like I've done here 200%, you start to see the failings. There's a lot more noise in the pictures, and also again that focus is a little bit difficult. It does seem to struggle holding on to the focal points. And when we come to the video in just a second, well, that is really quite poor at night. So for this camera, if it's going to be a night camera that you want to go for, then this is something that you really do need to bear in mind. Hang around in just 1 second, because I'll show you exactly how much detail, or in fact how little detail, is in one of those night photographs. So even when you're putting it through an editing process, it's very difficult to get any information back on it. With some phone cameras, you can run them through a program like Lightroom and bring in a little bit more information, take away some of that noise and make them a little bit more reasonable to look at. The problem is with this camera, there's so little information in the image in the first place that when you do run it through, the noise just becomes completely awful. You cannot do anything with this, and so therefore it really is a case of what you take is what you've got. Okay, lastly, before we summarise, let's have a quick look at that front camera. For me, there is only really one great feature with it, and that's actually a software feature. On the whole, it's just a standard 7 megapixel camera. It's got a 2.2 aperture, but it's the portrait mode and the bokeh which really does do a great job. And this is the type of example that I'm going to show you with this camera today. Now, I'm only going to really focus on this one feature on that front-facing camera, because everything else is very standard. Not terrible, but certainly not brilliant. Now, this does now have portrait effect on the front-facing camera, which means that you can change the bokeh, or the blurriness of the background, which if you're fans of doing selfies, then you might want to do that. It gives a slightly more professional-looking image. And as you can see, it really does detect the face incredibly well. If you look at the ear and the beard effect, it really distinguishes that from the background and enables you to make that background very blurred. So that is the best thing about the front-facing camera. So my friends, in summary, there's some good points and bad. Definitely the positives were the quality 4K video at 60 frames per second, the photographs in good light conditions. They were both comparable to something on the iPhone 11 Pro. The negatives were night photography and night video. And we also had that problem with the focus when we were quickly trying to focus between near and far objects, and in slow motion sometimes it also lost its focus. Not having that second lens I don't think is a problem, because in good conditions we zoomed 200, 300, 400% and still got a cracking image. So this is a great phone for the average person. If you're not going to be doing a lot of night photography or video, and most of the time you're using this in good conditions, then this is going to be completely adequate for everything that you need. Guys, I'd be really interested to find out exactly what you think. Leave a comment. Is this good enough? Is there a phone that's coming up soon that you think will beat this? Let me know, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.